Syracuse sports talk shows on QSportsTalk.com.
Welcome back to Orange Nation. Our artist of the day, Houdini, because one of the three had a birthday on this day. I'll let you know it eventually. This one, Funky Beats, Steve. Could you tell that was the name?
Yeah, who knew?
You know who likes a good funky beat?
Mike McAllister?
Yeah. When I think funky beats, I think Mike McAllister.
And just like that, he joins us now. Mike, always great to have you on. How are things going?
Things are going great. Funky Beats was actually my nickname in high school. So.
Nice. There you go. What a coincidence. All right, so this is our first time to talk to you since the Judah news was announced. So I know you had kind of said you thought it was 50-50. What are your thoughts? What's your take on him coming back?
I think it's huge for Syracuse and kind of wraps up a pretty strong offseason for Coach Autry as he tries to shape the roster for his first season next year, and probably the biggest domino of all of them that fell. I think the only real negative you can look at is the fact that they weren't able to keep Jesse. Pretty much everything else is pretty positive. I understand they lost Joe Girard, and obviously that's a lot of production and leadership and experience that you're losing, but I think they did a pretty good job replacing him comparatively, and you could be more talented there to make that argument. So the fact that they're able to retain Judah, I think it's huge. I think it rounds out the roster. It gives you a clear leader, a clear star, and gives you something known in what is a roster full of question marks. Even if we like some of the moves that they've made, there's a lot of questions in terms of how do some of the incoming guys fit? How do they adjust to Syracuse? What's the new system going to look like? How do some of the guys fit? Who makes big improvements from their true freshman year to their sophomore years? How does Naheem McLeod replace Jesse Edwards' production? And will he be still productive with more minutes, seemingly, than what he had at Florida State? You bring in Judah Mintz, you know what he is. You know he's a superstar. He's going to be one of the best point guards in the ACC. I think it's huge all around for Syracuse.
All right, you mentioned that there are some questions, and you're right, there certainly are. What is the biggest question mark now that the roster is finalized as you look ahead to next season?
I think schematically, I'm curious what they're going to do on the defensive end. I think there'll be enough offense they'll be able to score, but I've heard you guys and others talk about it, that the roster seems like it's built perfectly for the zone, but we're also hearing that, at least what's being communicated to recruits is that they're not going to be exclusively a zone team. So is man their base and they switch to zone on occasion, or is zone the base and they switch to man on occasion? I'm very curious to see how that plays out. And then exactly what the rotation is going to be from a roster standpoint. Does Chance Westry start at the 3 and you kind of start with 3 guards and then you bring in Chris Bell off the bench? Does Bell start and Chance Westry is your first guy off the bench and can replace either the 1, 2, or the 3? Those are some of the bigger questions, and I think how Naheem McLeod sort of fits in the middle there. Is he strictly going to be someone who plays defense and rebounds? Is he going to be able to play 25-plus minutes a game? And is he able to give you anything offensively? Those are some of the higher-level questions that I'm looking at.
You talked about scoring the basketball there, and we were just discussing it last segment. I was concerned that they may not be able to score the basketball. What makes you confident that they will be outside of the backcourt, and who do you think will be the scorer in the front court?
Well, I part of the reason that I'm confident is a little bit of projection in terms of what some guys can be. I was encouraged by what I saw from Benny Williams on the offensive end down the stretch of last season. Now, of course, he has to do that more consistently. There's no question, but I at least saw some positive things. And then, another offseason of development, I expect another step forward for him. Chris Bell, I thought, showed some flashes of being a pretty good offensive player last year, being able to shoot the ball. So if he can take another step forward, be a little bit more consistent, and be able to put the ball on the floor a little bit, I think that gives you a couple of potential offensive weapons in the front court. There's no question that there is a question there. I just have a little bit more on the defensive end, largely because we just don't know how Coach Autry is going to run things, given the roster and what the history has been with the zone, but then also his desire to play man.
All right, from a recruiting standpoint, I know that you had a chance recently to speak with Jalil Bethea. What can you tell us about that conversation?
Yeah, he's blown up a little bit. Syracuse has been recruiting him as long or longer than anyone. They have a very good relationship with him. During one of his recent EYBL sessions, he actually spoke with Carmelo Anthony, who said some good things, obviously, about Syracuse, and but said that he'd support him no matter where he went in. But obviously, Syracuse would be a good fit for him. That seemed to have an impact, but. Syracuse seemed to be the leader when they had him for an official visit last year. And then, since this spring, he's picked up offers from Connecticut and Kansas, and Kentucky starting to show interest. And he sounds like he's going to take multiple official visits potentially this summer. But I do expect him to get back to Syracuse at some point. So, and Miami's been recruiting him for a while. So there's certainly a lot of competition for Syracuse, but he says one of the biggest things in his recruitment is he values relationships, and he values being desired, being the player that a team wants as their top guy. Syracuse checks those boxes. They've been recruiting him the longest. They have a great relationship with him. They've told him he's their top target. So if that is all true and there aren't any other factors, I still think that Syracuse is going to have a very good chance to land him at the end of the day.
All right, let's switch gears and go over to football and talk some recruiting. Let's start with the quarterback position, and they've yet to secure that commitment from a top flight 2024 QB, but they've got a lot on their radar. So can you kind of break down the quarterback position for us as it pertains to what they're looking at?
Yeah, there's three primary names to monitor right now. One is John White, who is currently committed to Southern Mississippi, and he took an official visit this past weekend. He's now going to go and take a visit to Cincinnati, but I think Syracuse has a really good shot with him. They feel pretty good about it coming off of the official, but whenever you take an official somewhere else, obviously things can change. But going into that, Syracuse at least feels like they've got a real shot there. Another name to keep an eye on that's coming up to visit this weekend is Andy Bass, and he's a quarterback from the New England area, and he's fast as all get out, but is a little bit undersized. So he could be coming in as more of an athlete, but also because he's played college, or because he's played quarterback in high school, I think Syracuse could do some things with him in terms of using him a little bit like Taysom Hill, like they have in the past. And I apologize, Andy Bass is not from New England. He's from Oklahoma. But regardless, they plan to use him kind of like a Taysom Hill in that they can split him up at tight end, maybe in the slot, maybe as a running back, and do a lot of different things with him, getting him the ball in space, but he can also do some things throwing the ball. So I think he's going to kind of be a jack-of-all-trades type if they're able to land him. He's coming up this weekend. And then the third name is Brendan Zerbrook, and he is another quarterback who is fast and, right around 6'1", but a true dual threat. He actually just tweeted out shortly ago that he was offered. He's coming up to take an official visit next weekend, and I think Syracuse is in a really good spot with him as well.
Has the fact that Syracuse has two transfers from SEC schools in their quarterback room hurt the recruiting process? Because it looks like a big mountain to climb to get on the field.
It is, but the good thing that they can tell everybody is after this year, there's no established starter. That yes, you've got other guys that are going to be here in the program for a year or two before you arrive, but there's no incumbent after this year. Garrett Schrader's here for his final year of eligibility, and then everything's up in the air. So you can pitch that, hey, come in, compete, see where things land, and kind of go from there. And that's, I think, what the pitch is going to be. I know Syracuse is going to look to try to add two players in the 2024 recruiting class in terms of the quarterback position. And, if they were able to get Andy Bass, I think they take him on top of the other two. So, yeah, there are guys that have come in the last couple of cycles or in the last couple of off seasons through the transfer portal, but that's not stopping them from trying to grab a couple this cycle either.
All right, what can you tell us about this commitment from Delaware, top player in Delaware, defensive end Tristan Graham? I know you had a chance to talk to him as well. What should we know about him?
Yeah, he had a Michigan State offer. They were pushing pretty hard to try to get an official visit, but Syracuse had been recruiting him the longest, had the best relationship. He really liked the defensive system that Syracuse runs and bonded with defensive line coach Chris Acuff. But, just another guy that's got good size, and I think he's got the potential to grow into a tackle if he adds a bunch of weight, but he's also long enough and twitchy enough that he could stay on the end. So Syracuse likes to bring in those guys that are kind of tweeners and could either add some weight, as I said, and move inside, or, sort of just add some muscle and keep their length and not add too much weight and stay on the outside. And Tristan Graham certainly fits that bill, as does the other commitment that they landed yesterday in David McMorris. Both of those guys kind of fit that same bill of the, 6'3", 6'4", 250 pounds, could stay outside, could go inside, versatile defensive lineman that they think is going to be someone who can use his length, but also has a good first step in order to rush the quarterback.
Last one for you, Mike. I don't know. Did you get a chance to read that article in The Athletic from Bruce Feldman? Did you see that?
I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read bits and pieces of it.
What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think there are some very valid points there. And I do think a lot of Syracuse's downfall in terms of football relevancy is traced back to the hiring of Greg Robinson. And we know there's been reporting in the past that John Harbaugh wanted to interview for the job, and Darryl Gross wouldn't even talk to him. And imagine if Syracuse had hired John Harbaugh instead of Greg Robinson, how much different things would be. Now, at the time, John Harbaugh was a special teams coach in the NFL. He wasn't a head coach. He wasn't, didn't have the reputation that he does now in terms of being a leader and a developer of talent and a winner and all those things. But not even interviewing someone with the name Harbaugh for a football coaching position just seems like, that wasn't the best decision. I think kind of tells you, some of the decision-making processes back then just weren't where they needed to be. And then I think, once they did get someone in Doug Marrone, who was a good coach and seemed to have things going in the right direction, seems like there were some issues with the relationship between him and the administration, and that's ultimately what led to him leaving. So I think just a lot of bad things that haven't allowed Syracuse to stay consistent since the Greg Robinson hiring, and they're still dealing with some of the ripple effects of that.
Yeah, no doubt. Great stuff as always, Mike. Appreciate you coming on. Enjoy the start of your summer, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Mike McAllister from allsyracuse.com, Syracuse on SI.
If you're good friends with him, you can call him Funky Beat.
That's right.
McAllister.
That's right. We got to hit a timeout here. We're going to talk some
smog.
Talk some smog on the other side with an expert, Dan Westervelt from Columbia will join us on the other side. Back after this on ESPN.